My wife told me to accept her coworker living with us, or she'd tell everyone I'm not a real man. The next hours, he laughed at my cooking and said, "This is why she needs me." But I served him more than just dinner. So here I am, sitting in a house that used to feel like mine, wondering when exactly I became a stranger in my own life. Camille and I have been married for just over 10 years. 11, this November, if we make it. And honestly, a few months ago, I would have told you we were happy. Not passionate, not fireworks every night happy, but real, steady, grown-up love. I'm not a romantic, but I always thought that's what lasting relationships were supposed to be. Comfort, commitment, quiet understanding. We live just outside of Denver. I'm an HVAC tech, been working the job for 20 years now. I like it. There's a rhythm to it, a satisfaction when the unit starts humming again and you've solved a problem nobody else could. I come home covered in dust and insulation, but I've always made sure to leave the job at the door. Camille's world couldn't be more different. She works for some trendy tech-adjacent firm downtown. Marketing or branding or user insights. I've never been entirely sure. She makes more money than I do and dresses like every day's a job interview. But I never resented that. In fact, I was proud of her. She's one of those women who walks into a room and makes everyone pay attention, even when she's not trying. You'd think that would make her arrogant, but no. She's clever, charming, magnetic. That's what drew me to her in the first place. We don't have kids. She said early on she didn't want them, and I, after some time, made peace with that. I thought we were a team. I thought we had something strong. But then, a couple months ago, she started talking about this new guy at work. Jonah. Jonah this. Jonah that. Jonah's hilarious. Jonah's brilliant. Jonah's been through a lot. Jonah needs a break. At first, I didn't think anything of it. I've been around long enough to know people vent about work. But then she started mentioning how Jonah had no family in Colorado. How his apartment was a shoebox. How his landlord was screwing him over and the renovations kept getting delayed. And one night, over dinner, she just dropped it casually. Jonah might need a place to crash for a while. I raised an eyebrow. Like a few nights? She didn't look up from her plate. Maybe a couple weeks. Guest rooms not being used. I shrugged. Maybe he can get a hotel or stay with a friend? She looked at me then. Long, hard. Something unreadable behind her eyes. You know, she said, if you weren't so insecure about everything, maybe I wouldn't have to keep defending you. I was stunned. What are you talking about? You get weird every time I mention Jonah, she said, now visibly annoyed. He's just a friend. And he needs help. Are you really going to act like a child about this? I stayed quiet. She pushed her chair back, stood up, and walked over to the sink. Her back to me. If you don't want him here, fine, she said. But don't be surprised when people start asking why I'm married to someone who hasn't been a real man in years. The words hit like a punch. I didn't even respond. I just stared at my plate, not tasting a single thing on it. She left the room like she'd won an argument we hadn't even started. The next day, Jonah showed up with a duffel bag and a stupid grin. Tall, lean, that deliberately unkempt hair guys wear when they're trying to look like they don't care. He shook my hand like he was trying to out-alpha me, and the worst part was, it worked. Camille stood behind him, smiling, like everything was normal. He moved into the guest room. Just a few weeks, they said. But it started feeling permanent almost immediately. He helped himself to the fridge, left his crap all over the bathroom, and strutted around the house like he'd always lived there. Camille laughed louder when he was around. Her jokes hit differently with him. They cooked together, made cocktails in the evening, and by the second week, they had this routine, like I wasn't even there. I didn't want to believe what I was seeing. I told myself maybe I was imagining it. Maybe I was just being paranoid. But that illusion shattered one Thursday night. Camille was working late. I made dinner, something simple but good. Grilled steak fajitas, guacamole from scratch, roasted corn. I enjoy cooking. Always have. It calms me down. Jonah walked into the kitchen just as I was plating everything. He sniffed, grinned, and said, "You really go all out, huh?" I said nothing. He sat down, picked up a tortilla, loaded it like he owned the place, and took a bite. Chewed slowly. Smirked. "Huh," he said, "not bad. I mean, edible, anyway." Still I said nothing. He looked up at me then, with that smug little grin. "This is cute. You trying to win her back with fajitas, or something?" That was the moment. Right there. That spark, deep in my gut, telling me I'd been blind for too long. I left the room. Camille got home an hour later, kissed him on the cheek like I wasn't even standing there, and they curled up on the couch with wine and some crime documentary. I went to the garage, sat in the dark, and just listened. The sound of their laughter through the walls was worse than any shouting. That night, I didn't sleep. And the next morning, while Camille showered, I did something I've never done in my life. I checked her phone. I didn't want to. I felt sick doing it. But it took about 10 seconds to find what I needed. Her messages with Jonah were filled with flirtation, inside jokes, secrets, and the one that made my hands shake. Jonah. Last night was incredible. He's so clueless, lol. Camille. Poor guy made fajitas like it would fix anything. There were more. Lots more. plans, talk of next steps, talk of freedom. My world turned cold. I didn't yell, didn't rage, didn't storm out or cry or slam doors. That's what she probably expected. But I'd been in worse situations, in hotter rooms, and I knew that the best way to respond to betrayal wasn't fury, it was patience. I played the long game. Over the next couple of days, I acted completely normal. I told her the fajitas were a little too salty, joked that maybe I'd leave cooking to the real chefs, and asked Jonah if he needed extra towels for the guest room. Inside, though, I was unraveling. Not with sadness, not anymore, but with this slow-burning clarity. The kind that forces you to reevaluate everything. Every touch, every smile, every excuse she ever gave me for why she came home late, or forgot to text, or had girls' night twice a week, but came home smelling like aftershave and hotel soap. They thought they had me fooled. And honestly, maybe they had for a while. But now, I saw them for exactly who they were. And that meant I could start planning my next move. First thing I did was call a lawyer. I had an old friend from high school, Vince, who went into family law after his own messy divorce. We'd stayed in touch over the years, mostly through Christmas cards and the occasional Broncos tailgate. I told him everything. He listened for a long time, then gave a quiet sigh. Warren, he said, you're gonna want proof. Solid, time-stamped, ideally with a witness or some kind of documentation. You know how these things go. He didn't have to explain. Colorado might be a no-fault state, but the courts still care when it comes to property, assets, and, most importantly, spousal support. So I started building a file. Second thing I did was call Paul, another buddy from way back. Paul's a freelance PI now, mostly insurance fraud cases and cheating spouses. He has a camera that can zoom in from 2 blocks away and a Chevy with tinted windows and more gadgets than a Bond movie. I gave him Jonah's name, the address, Camille's work schedule, and just said, let me know what you find. It didn't take long. The following week, Paul sent over the first batch of pictures. Jonah and Camille in his car, her hand on his thigh, them kissing in a parking lot, checking into a hotel near the office on a Wednesday afternoon. He even got video of them holding hands and laughing like teenagers on the sidewalk. It was so blatant, like they weren't even trying to hide it. While this was happening, I kept up the act. I cooked. I smiled. I even watched a movie with them one night, some comedy Camille loved, but I could barely register what was happening on screen. All I could focus on was the way Jonah leaned into her, and the way her fingers grazed his knee like muscle memory. There was no remorse, no shame, no guilt. They believed I was too weak, too pathetic to do anything about it. That belief would be their biggest mistake. I started making small changes around the house. First, I removed Camille's name from the utility bills, which were all originally under mine anyway. Then I moved some of my personal files, tools, and important items to a storage unit. She didn't notice. Or if she did, she didn't say anything. I made copies of our financial documents. Every bank statement, retirement account, credit card record. I pulled the security footage from the doorbell cam, which, apparently, they both forgot even existed, showing Jonah coming and going at all hours. I bookmarked every incriminating message I'd found on her phone, saved them to a secure drive, printed some out. It was like building a case for trial. Because in some ways, that's exactly what it was. Meanwhile, Jonah was starting to get comfortable. Too comfortable. He started leaving his stuff in the living room. Started walking around the kitchen shirtless, like it was a frat house. Left his beard trimmer plugged in on my bathroom sink. I don't know if it was ego or just disrespect, but it was clear he didn't see me as a threat. Camille fed that too. She stopped pretending we were a couple at all. We didn't sleep in the same bed anymore. She moved permanently into the second bedroom, claiming she needed her space and wasn't feeling well. I didn't fight it. I wanted them to believe I was broken, that I'd given up, that I was too embarrassed to push back. And it worked. Then one morning, I caught Jonah talking on the phone in the backyard. I was in the garage and the window was open. He didn't know I could hear him. Yeah, he said. Honestly, I'll be on the lease soon. She's just waiting for him to sign off on a few things, and then it's go time. He laughed. Nah, man. He's harmless. Like, he still makes breakfast for us. Poor guy's in denial. I didn't react. I just sat there, watching the shadows move through the blinds, and waited for him to go back inside. That night, I cooked lasagna. Camille loved it, or used to, anyway. It had been our anniversary dish the first year we got married. Jonah practically inhaled it. You really should open a restaurant, he said between bites, chuckling. Honestly, like a sad divorced dad's cafe. You'd slaughter it. Camille laughed. Didn't even try to hide it. And me? I smiled. Because the paperwork was ready. The documentation was airtight. The lawyer had everything lined up. After the lasagna night, something inside me went still. Like the part of me that used to hope, or hurt, or ask why, had just gone quiet. I started seeing everything around me with this almost surgical clarity. Every moment between them. The way Camille would touch his shoulder when she passed behind him, or how Jonah would joke about us husbands Like I was a clueless old roommate instead of the man who paid for the damn roof over their heads. All of it was fuel. I moved like a man with a job to finish. Every morning, I left early, made it seem like I picked up extra shifts, but really I was sitting in cafes, organizing documents, updating timelines, talking to my lawyer. Vince was a machine. The way he moved through paperwork was almost poetic. His tone never changed, even when I showed him the most gutting messages or photos. "You're doing the right thing," he said every time. But it didn't always feel that way. See, when you're betrayed like this, it's not one wound. It's death by 1,000 tiny cuts. A wine glass left in the sink that isn't yours. Her laugh from behind a closed door. His slippers on the welcome mat you bought during a trip to Estes Park. Even the coffee mugs started to mock me. They had become us, and I had become extra. I kept telling myself that everything I was doing was justified, necessary, fair. And it was. Legally, morally, practically, yes. But emotionally, I'd be lying if I said I didn't feel like I was failing at something bigger. Like I'd spent 10 years building a life with a woman who never actually wanted me in it. She just wanted what I could offer. And Jonah? He was the reward at the end of her patience. Still, I stayed quiet. That was the part they couldn't understand. Jonah started pushing boundaries more. He began leaving laundry in the shared bathroom, my bathroom. Started having long, loud phone calls on speaker in the kitchen while I was trying to eat. And Camille didn't just let it slide. She encouraged it. "I don't understand why you're so tense all the time," she said one night. I just looked at her. I didn't even try to explain anymore. She was so far gone, I don't think it would have mattered. But what really cracked something in me was the paperwork I found on the kitchen counter one Thursday morning. Jonah had filled out a lease application form. It was printed from my computer, the printer I bought, the Wi-Fi I pay for, and sitting in the middle of the kitchen table like a silent threat. His handwriting was neat, confident. Where it asked for current residence, he'd written, "Staying with girlfriend Camille. Property owned by her husband Warren, for now." For now? I stared at those two words longer than I should have. I didn't confront him. I didn't confront her. I just took a photo of it, sent it to Vince, and said, "Add it to the file." That same day, I took a little drive out to a property I'd inherited from my uncle in Evergreen. It's nothing special, just a cabin, really, tucked away in the woods. Needs work. The plumbing is ancient. The roof leaks when it rains. But it's mine. Has been for years. I never told Camille about it. I stood on the porch, looked out at the trees, and breathed for what felt like the first time in weeks. It was quiet. I needed that. I went back to the city feeling like I'd seen the other side of the storm. Not out of it yet. Not by a long shot, but close enough to believe it wouldn't drown me. That night, Jonah made cocktails. He liked to play bartender, always adding a little too much gin, always acting like he was doing us a favor. "Let's toast to good roommates," he said, grinning, handing me a drink. I raised my glass. "To good endings," I said. Camille glanced at me, but didn't ask. She didn't want to know what I meant. She never did. After that toast, to good endings, things shifted in the house, even if only slightly. Jonah seemed to smirk a little less around me. He still did his thing, still played the role of confident, easygoing interloper, but there was something different behind his eyes. Like maybe, just maybe, he started to wonder if I knew more than I let on. Camille didn't notice. Or if she did, she didn't care. She was coasting. Some nights, she barely spoke to me. Other nights, she'd try and be polite, like we were divorced friends sharing a flat instead of a married couple sharing a history. She'd ask if I wanted anything from Whole Foods, or tell me she left the laundry out if I wanted to throw my stuff in. I answered in one-syllable replies. Not because I was bitter, not anymore, but because I was conserving energy. I'd stopped trying to be part of the marriage long ago. I was just living in the shell of it until the moment came to blow the doors open. The PI had everything he needed. Vince had built the legal equivalent of a nuclear warhead. Photos, call logs, message transcripts, receipts, statements, witness notes, even a discreet video of Jonah and Camille making out in the back of his car outside their office garage. Every time Paul sent me a new update, I felt less human, but I also felt less powerless. And maybe that was the trade-off. Maybe healing doesn't come all at once. Maybe it starts with slowly shifting from victim to architect. In the meantime, I played host. I cooked. I mowed the lawn. I paid the bills. Jonah? He started getting bolder in the way only a man with borrowed confidence could. One afternoon, I came home early from a job and found him sitting in the recliner. My recliner, shirtless, feet up, eating chips directly from the bag and watching a game. He looked over at me, didn't move. "What's up, big guy?" he said, chewing. I walked past him, didn't say a word, went to my room, and closed the door. Behind it, I stood still. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't sad. I was done, but I wasn't finished. That weekend, I cleaned the garage top to bottom. Didn't say a word to either of them. I boxed up some old tools, labeled everything, reorganized shelves. It was the kind of task that makes a man feel like he has control over something. And more than that, it let me think. I kept imagining what would happen if I just snapped. If I just confronted Camille and Jonah right there in the living room, exposed them, screamed, demanded answers. But I already knew there were no answers worth hearing. And giving them a stage wasn't the point anymore. I wasn't after catharsis. I was after consequences. Camille was beginning to push for Jonah's name on the lease. It started with little comments. Maybe we should formalize things, or it's awkward for him to be here without something in writing. She didn't come right out and ask me to sign anything yet, but she was laying the groundwork. I played dumb. I'll think about it, I said one morning, sipping coffee. She nodded, didn't press. That night, I called Vince. It's almost time, I told him. Good, he said. You've got them cornered. Not yet, I said. I want one more thing. What's that? I want them to feel secure, I said. I want them to think they've already won. And so I gave them space. I made myself scarce. Left early, came home late. Ate dinner in the garage or grabbed takeout, and sat in the truck. Sometimes I'd see them on the couch through the window, her feet in his lap, his arm around her, the TV lighting up their smug faces, and I'd feel nothing. Not anger, not jealousy, just distance. They were already in the rear view. Camille started mentioning future plans. A vacation maybe. Some trip to California Jonah had always wanted to take. I nodded along. She took my silence as defeat. Jonah kept making himself at home. Started bringing over his things, a better blender, a Bluetooth speaker, a gaming console. Little by little, trying to claim space. He even made a joke one night about moving the recliner to the basement. That one, I didn't let slide. Touch that chair, I said flatly. And you'll be moving a lot more than furniture. He blinked, forced a laugh, and Camille smirked like boys will be boys. But that moment, the way his smile faltered just for a second, told me he wasn't so confident after all. He'd grown fat on my silence. Soon, I'd take the table out from under him. The last piece fell into place on a Wednesday afternoon. Camille called me while I was on a service job in Littleton, asked if I had a minute to talk when I got home. I already knew what it was about. The pressure had been building. She was tired of pretending. She wanted control of the house, the narrative, and me, all in one neat little agreement. I told her sure. When I pulled into the driveway that evening, she was waiting in the living room, sipping wine. Jonah was lounging on the couch with one arm slung over the back, like he was already king of the castle. I could feel their anticipation in the air. They thought this was it. The moment the poor, pitiful husband would finally surrender his crown. I sat across from them. Calm. Polite. Camille wasted no time. So, she began, I think it's time we talk about the lease. It's been long enough. It's awkward for Jonah to keep living here without something in writing. I figured we could work something out. I nodded. You want me to add him to the lease? Jonah grinned. Yeah, it just makes sense, man. I mean, I've basically been here for a month. I looked at them for a long moment. They were so sure, so smug. Then I reached into my bag and placed a thick envelope on the coffee table. Cream-colored, heavy stock. Vince had said it would land better that way. Camille stared at it. What's this? Divorce papers, I said simply. Her smile twitched. I figured. I added, since things have changed, this makes sense. You're clearly happy with Jonah. I won't stand in the way. She blinked fast. Jonah straightened slightly. Wait, divorce, she said. I nodded. All filed, all clean. No mess. I've waived spousal support. She opened the envelope and began reading. Her face went pale. Wait, the house. It's mine, I said calm. Bought it 6 years before we married. Paid off. In my name. Colorado law doesn't split premarital property. She shook her head. But you contributed nothing to the mortgage. Not a cent. That's all in the documentation. I have copies of your direct deposits, spending, bank records, everything. Her mouth opened. No words came out. And the infidelity? I added, as I handed over a second envelope. My lawyer has all the proof he needs. Photos, texts, time-stamped hotel visits. Your calls with Jonah. Even the lease application he filled out. Jonah went still. You spied on us. I turned to him. You lived in my home. Slept with my wife. Mocked me in my own kitchen. And yes, while you were doing that, I quietly documented every moment. So yes, I watched. Carefully. He looked like a kid caught stealing candy. Effective immediately, I continued. You have 48 hours to vacate the premises. You're not on the lease. You're not on the mortgage. You're not even listed as an occupant. I've spoken to a housing attorney. You are not a tenant. You have no legal rights to remain here. You're joking, Camille said, breathless. No, I replied. And you'll find a second document in there. A formal notice to vacate for both of you. In case you want to stay together. You can go to his new apartment. The one that's not under renovation. The one he never had in the first place. Her face collapsed. You said, I know what you said. I also know what Jonah said. About replacing me. About go time. About how clueless I was. I stood up. I played the fool. You thought I was weak. And that was your mistake. You assumed my silence was surrender. Jonah stood, angry now. You can't just throw us out. I can. And I am. Want to call a cop and ask them to explain it to you? Or would you prefer a sheriff deliver the notice in uniform? He opened his mouth again, but this time, nothing came out. Camille just sat there, quietly unraveling. It was a rare kind of silence. The sound of a reality finally collapsing around someone who thought they were untouchable. I'll be staying at the Evergreen cabin for a while, I said. I'll give you until Friday to collect your things and go. If you're still here after that, law enforcement gets involved. Camille finally found her voice. You're doing this just to hurt me. I looked at her, and for the first time in a long time, I felt nothing. No, I said. I'm doing this to free myself. I drove to Evergreen that night with a thermos of coffee and a feeling I hadn't known in years. Peace. No yelling. No public humiliation. No drama. Just facts, consequences, and clarity. They left the house 2 days later. Quietly. Jonah didn't say a word. Camille tried to send a long email, full of explanations, apologies, and "you'll always be part of me" poetry, but I archived it without reading. Blocked her number after that. Vince filed everything. I kept the house. No alimony. No scandal. Just truth and distance. In the months since, I've fixed up the cabin, replanted the backyard, and gone on 2 actual dates. The kind with honest conversation and no buried resentment. Small steps, but real ones. The recliner's still mine. The fajitas taste better alone. And when people ask how I'm doing, I just smile and say, free.